Today, I want to talk about an area of thinking through systemic racism that has nothing to do with giant policies. It has nothing to do with um, some kind of enormous economic indicators. But I think this lies very near the heart of our struggle with understanding the way systemic racism affects us and affects black people around us. One of the things in some of the work I do is I end up reading lots of studies and polls, and because I'm trying to help people work through relationship issues, either as parents or as spouses or in whatever relationship they're in. And so I'm constantly looking for what are people's attitudes, what do we know about the way the human brain is working and the way we think through relationships? And I inevitably, in reading through that, I run across things that I find fascinating when it comes to talking about race. For instance, this is from a study. Researchers asked a nationwide sample of blacks and whites to indicate the extent to which they felt blacks and whites were the target of discrimination in each of the decades from the 1950s to the 2000s. They used a scale of 1 to 10. Both, like blacks and whites, pretty much agreed on things were bad for blacks in the 1950s. I mean, this is the era of the Montgomery bus boycott and things like that. But as you go along, things begin to change. Number one, whites believed that racism declined faster than blacks believed it did. But the second thing that I found fascinating was this. On average, when you got to the era in which we live, you moved out of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, you get to the 90s and the 2000s, on average, whites rated anti-white bias as more present and more prevalent in the 2000s than anti-black bias is. And by more than a full point on the 10-point scale. In fact, something like 11% of whites gave anti-white bias the maximum. We are at a 10 here as a society. But only 2% of whites gave the maximum value when it came to anti-black sentiment. Now, here's one more from a different study. Blacks, Hispanics, Asians all say that the biggest problem when it comes to race is people not seeing racial discrimination where it really does exist. But among whites, what was said is the biggest problem was people seeing racial discrimination where it really does not exist. So blacks, Hispanics, and Asians all say, well, the bigger problem is, yeah, sometimes maybe there's racism where it doesn't exist, but the biggest problem is people don't see it when it's actually there. And whites, the majority of whites said, no, the biggest problem is people think it's there when it's not. Now, why do I bring this up? It isn't just to point out that we have different views of what we believe is happening with race. It's to point out something deeper. In general, do we believe people of color when they say racism is happening? Do we believe them? When black people say, I've been a victim of police brutality. Do we believe them? Do we have to see a video to believe them? Do we have to see a video and then do we immediately ask the question, but wait, what happened before this? I need to know what all went on before I'm going to... Is that how we talk? Would we say the same thing in reverse? When we hear from a white police officer and says this is what went down, do we say, wait, I need to see the video and I need to know what really happened? When our black friend says, I've been pulled over for driving while black numerous times, do we believe them? When our black friend says, I get harassed in stores, I get followed around, when I leave the store, I've been asked, hey, what's in that bag? Do we believe them? Why does it take a video? Why would we say it's actually worse for us than it is for blacks? Why would we say the biggest problem is that you're saying that race is an issue when it's not? When we say someone is pulling the race card, what we're really saying is, I don't believe you. You're saying these things keep happening and I don't believe you. It's not about race. It can't be about race. Well, the reason it can't be about race in our minds is because it's not about race for us. I don't ever think in terms of my race. I really don't. I don't have to. But when black people say, hey, I can't get a loan and it has to do with my race, it has to do with the color of my skin, do we believe them? Now, hear me. I am a person who loves data. I love science. I love facts. But here's what's interesting. Even when the data and the science and the facts say, oh yeah, here are these massive problems, we still go, I don't know. We have all this data that says there's a huge economic disparity. The 500 richest white people in America have more wealth than all African Americans combined. If an African American comes to you and says, I can't seem to get a job and I think it's because of my race, do we go, or do we believe them? Do we believe our black brothers and sisters when they say this is a problem, these things are happening, this thing keeps happening to me? Systemic racism wants to deny the truth of their experience. I don't mean we're sitting around going, oh, I don't want those black people to have stuff. I don't want those black people to have it well. No. But the system, the culture has created this idea that for some reason we don't believe them. And it perpetuates the system because if we don't believe, then there isn't a problem. And if there isn't a problem, nothing needs to be fixed. So the question I would ask today, and it's very simple, is do you believe black people when they say something is a problem? When they say that race is an issue? When they say that they have been treated badly and unfairly? Do you believe them? And if not, why? Systemic racism is never going to be fixed until the majority culture, which is us white people, are willing to hear the truth from people of color and believe it.